welcome to another episode of the Heartland Author Podcast. I'm Aaron Apollo Camp. For today's episode, I had the honor of interviewing life coach and author Karin Freeland about her book, The Ins and Outs of My Vagina, a Penetrating Memoir. I'm here with Karin Freeland, the author of The Ins and Outs of My Vagina, a Penetrating Memoir. Karin, welcome to the Heartland Author Podcast.
Hey, Aaron. Thanks for having me.
Okay, for the first part of this interview, I always ask this of every guest. Feel free to introduce yourself to our listeners.
Okay, awesome. So I am a recovered corporate workaholic. I spent about 16 years in corporate, chasing paychecks and bigger titles and, really looking for happiness in all the wrong places, and woke up one day and realized, wow, I'm really unfulfilled. There has got to be more to life. And after going through a bit of a midlife crisis, not knowing what I wanted to do, I finally remembered one day that I had the makings of a memoir sitting on my laptop, and that it was time to finally finish that story. So I started writing, and then in the process of writing, I realized, wow, I'm changing my life, and I have the keys and the secrets for how other women can do this. So I decided to go become certified as a life and reinvention coach, and now that's what I do full time.
Without spoiling too much of your book, describe what your book, The Ins and Outs of My Vagina, is about.
Sure, and that is a great question, because I think there's a lot of misconceptions when people hear the book. They're like, what could possibly be in there? But it is really a journey through womanhood. It is all the mishaps and misadventures that I've had with my vagina that so many other women can relate to. And they read the stories, and they actually get to relive their own stories vicariously as they're reading mine. So it's really a neat experience for any woman and men who just kind of want to learn more about what it's like to be a woman.
Yeah, your book, when someone might look at the title initially and mistakenly think it's an erotica book of some kind, when it's not really erotica.
That's true. Now, it doesn't disappoint, I don't think, in the sex, but I have been married for 13 years, so much of the book is actually me and my husband when there are, sexual experiences that are discussed. But, some people have said, oh, is this just a list of, like, all your conquests? And I'm like, no, it's exactly the opposite of that. There are some sex scenes from, boyfriends I had before my husband, but it's really more about just understanding as a woman how your body works and all of the things, from periods to pregnancy to bikini waxes, all the things that we go through.
Now, is your book self-published or traditionally published?
So it is self-published. I really wanted to traditionally publish, but apparently traditional publishers really won't look at you for a memoir unless you're very well known and have a huge following, which I did not. And so it was either, well, take a couple of years to try to build up a following, or just go ahead and self-publish.
Now, if you have a typical writing routine, what is your typical writing routine if you have one?
Oh, geez. It's sort of evolved. I think, when I first started writing, I was in corporate, so I was really fitting my writing in wherever I could. So a lot of times that meant I was in a sweaty wrestling gym with my laptop writing chapters while my son was at wrestling practice. Or, coming home from work and staying up really late and having a couple of glasses of wine and writing. I like to say I write drunk and edit sober. Which I don't recommend for everyone, but I think when you're writing a book that's as personal as mine, I had to kind of get rid of my inhibitions sometimes and allow myself just to put everything on paper and then go back and take out anything that maybe I thought, that might be too much. But I don't have a real specific writing process other than I can't be distracted. I can't have noise in the background. I can't have a TV on or music. I need ultimate silence.
About the alcohol bit you mentioned, I do not drink alcohol because my dad, who died a couple years ago, was an alcoholic before I was born.
Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that.
It's okay, and I made a personal choice in life that I did not want to become addicted to alcohol. Now, I do drink a lot of soda pop, especially Pepsi.
Okay. Well, I think I've changed my relationship with alcohol a lot because when I went through my midlife crisis, I spent a lot of time drinking and trying to find the answers in the bottom of a wine bottle and kind of fill the gaping hole that my lack of fulfillment in my career had left in me. And then I realized this isn't helping. The answers are not in the bottom of a wine bottle, and it was actually self-sabotaging behavior. So I don't drink nearly as much as I used to. But yeah, back when I first started this, it was kind of a different time for me.
Now, what was your favorite and least favorite parts of writing your book?
Oh, my favorite part was just going back and re-experiencing some of this stuff. We actually, my editor and I, Gary Krebs, he's fantastic. We decided to actually take my vagina and create her as a character. So her name is V, and her and I have quite a bit of dialogue in the book. And so it was really fun to go back and write, like, what would V have said to me in this scenario? How sassy would she have been? Or would she have pushed me to do something that I wasn't comfortable doing? And that was a really fun experience. The least favorite part, I guess the editing, like the final editing where I had to cut a bunch of chapters because I just had too many vagina experiences. I was like, this book is getting too long. So that was kind of my least favorite part because it was really hard to look at your work objectively and figure out what to take out.
Now, you've mentioned your midlife crisis at a point or two in this interview.
Yeah.
Now, what is the midlife crisis you suffered, and how did it have an impact on you? And I apologize if this question repeats a lot of stuff you've said earlier in this interview.
Oh, no problem. I mean, for me, it was kind of like a slow bleed, death by 1,000 paper cuts. And I was working in corporate and I don't know. I think I got attached to other people's dreams for me, and it stopped being my own dream. And I just was so focused on climbing the ladder. But then there were so many other areas of my life that I was neglecting. I was neglecting my marriage. I was neglecting my children, especially. I was neglecting my friends, my community, my hobbies, myself. And it just got to a point where I didn't even recognize myself. I was like, who am I? And I didn't see a way out. And I think that's what triggered the midlife crisis the most, besides having a couple of deaths in the family. But really just feeling helpless and hopeless. Like, what else could I be doing other than working as a B2B marketer? I didn't know anything else. And I really didn't see a path for me to have the freedom that I was looking for. And it wasn't until I watched The Secret, actually. I don't know. Have you ever seen The Secret, that movie about the law of attraction?
No. A lot of the movies I watch are sports related, like Days of Thunder or Hoosiers.
Oh, okay. Okay, cool. So this is a video about, like, all about the law of attraction. And if you put it out into the universe, or, you ask God, depending on what your faith base is, you'll receive it in return. And I thought, wow, like, if I just say I want to write this memoir and then I actually take action and start doing it, like, I can recreate my life. I can reinvent myself. And that's exactly what I did. And then I got laid off. So that made it really easy because then I didn't have an option. I couldn't go back to work anymore. I had to really strip myself of that identity. And that's why I say I'm a recovered corporate workaholic, because now I've totally changed the way that I work.
Now, I'm going to go back to a question earlier. I had honestly never thought of developing a character for a nonfiction work.
Yeah. it kind of works because, I mean, obviously my vagina doesn't really talk, right? But we took a little creative license for this one and just really put ourselves back in that position. And what was that inner dialogue that I had with myself, like especially before losing my virginity, or when you're in the birthing process or post-birth when I'm sort of looking at my war-torn body and trying to figure out what I'm going to do with it. And it really, I think, brought such a comedic element that wouldn't have been there if V wasn't a character.
Now, on your website, you list yourself as, among other things, a life coach. Now, I'm going to ask you, what is a life coach? Because some people might have the perception when they see the word coach, they're immediately thinking of, like, a football coach or something of that nature.
Yeah, absolutely. And in a way, it's almost like having your own coach, but for your life. And so I look at many different elements from career to relationships to their romantic life to their parenting, their spiritual life, and say, okay, what areas of your life are lacking? Are you like me, feeling stuck and don't know your purpose? Then I can help you uncover what that might be. If you're a working mom and you're not prioritizing your children and you're struggling to balance it all, I really work with my clients on helping them set goals and figure out which goals are most important to them and then taking things off their plate. Because, we love to add things to our plate, but sometimes we forget, then we need to take something off of it. And I really help people own their power. There was so much time where I just felt stuck and I didn't know how to get myself unstuck because I was literally living in the passenger seat of my life. And so when we give them the tools that they need for confidence and just to know that they can make a decision, they can change directions, suddenly they're able to help build that pathway to freedom that they're looking for, whatever that might be.
As I was doing research about you in preparation for this interview, I found out that you were a contestant on the former CBS game show $1 Million Password, working with the late Betty White as a contestant in Celebrity Pairing. What was it like to work with Betty White?
Oh my goodness, she was amazing. She is just the sweetest, funniest, most supportive person in real life. I mean, of course, our interaction was fairly brief, but just the whole time we were on stage, she would reach over and grab my hand and say, okay, you ready for this? We're going to do it. We're going to be great. And I really enjoyed just being able to be in her presence for that short period of time.
Okay, well, that is the last question I had. So, Karin, thank you for appearing on the Heartland Author podcast.
Absolutely. It was such a pleasure, and I hope everybody will check out The Ins and Outs of My Vagina, a Penetrating Memoir. You can find it on Amazon or Barnes & Noble, really anywhere that books are sold online.
I enjoyed interviewing Karin, and I will be doing several more interviews of authors throughout March. This is Aaron Apollo Camp reminding y'all to write your imagination. Bye for now. You can learn more about me and my book writing projects at authoraac.wordpress.com. You can also follow me on Facebook and Twitter at authoraac. You can also watch videos on the Heartland Author channel on YouTube. Copyright 2022, Aaron Apollo Camp, all rights reserved. This podcast episode is intended for the private listening of its audience. Any reuse or retransmission of this podcast episode without the express written consent of the podcast host is prohibited except under fair use guidelines. Royalty-free music and sound effects obtained from https://www.zapsplat.com.